Today we get another glimpse into the utter chaos that officers are often called to. Hi everyone, welcome to today's badge cam lesson here at Active Self Protection. I'm your host, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Bullover. Today's video comes to us from Tehachapi, California.
Today's video brought to you by New Way Ford. New Way helps people all over the country find the right new or used car at the best price with incredible service. We bought Mrs. Asp's 2021 Bronco Sport from New Way, and I'm a satisfied customer. If you see me rolling in my New Way Ford F-150, come say hi and let New Way give you a quote on your next vehicle purchase.
Officers have been called here to the home of a man who's having clearly a psychotic break. His grandmother actually called 911 and tried to play it off like she wasn't to not key him in, because this guy has already stabbed somebody else in the house, and everyone's afraid, or she's certainly afraid he's going to turn the knives on her. So that has led to a kind of an odd dispatch by dispatch for the officers here to kind of an unknown situation. So let's listen in what happens on the badge cams.
Where is he?
Where is that? Where's he at?
He's in the house. I don't know.
Inside this house?
Kern County Sheriff's Office. Anybody in there? Make yourself known.
Open the door. Come out with your hands up, unarmed.
Shoot me, bitch. Shoot me.
We don't want to do that. Just come on out. Let's break the window and pull him out. Hold on. We're coming to get you. Hold on. Is there anybody else inside here?
Yeah, one our grandma's inside.
Grandma's inside?
Yeah, she's been stabbed too.
Grandma's inside. She's been stabbed. Give me your other hand. Give me your other hand. Can you walk?
No.
You can't walk?
No, I can't.
Okay. Hold on. I'm going to keep pulling you out here.
I can see you still in the living room. He probably killed his grandma by now. He almost killed me. I mean, Mike died still. Okay.
He's right here.
Okay.
To the left.
Ready, fish? There we go. Put the knife down! Put the knife down!
Kern County Sheriff's Office. Anybody in there? Make yourself known.
Open the door! Come out with your hands up, unarmed!
Shoot me, bitch. Shoot me.
We don't want to do that. Just come on out. Let's break the window and pull him out. Watch your eyes, guys. Watch your eyes. Yep. Watch your eyes. Hold on. We're coming to get you. Hold on. I'm going to pull you out, okay? Somebody else inside here.
Yeah, our grandma's inside.
Grandma's inside?
Yeah, she's been stabbed too.
Grandma's inside.
Controlling his 20 for the victim.
He probably killed his grandma by now. He almost killed me.
He's 20, we got.
He's right here.
Okay.
To the left.
Ready?
Hey, there, Brandon. There we go. Come on. Put the knife down. Put the knife down.
You can see here the knife that he had when he came out after them, and the shots that they took did prove fatal. What the news stories in the description say is that the other people in the home did live through this. Man, you want to talk about a little bit crazy here. Here's a plug from me to you. Man, officers, you need to have your first aid kit on your person. Sometimes because you're gonna have victims like this that you're gonna need to help, that they're dragging out of the house and those things. So make sure you've got that on your person, and let's think about some other lessons. Mike, I do think usually dispatch does a really good job, but sometimes they just don't know what the heck is going on. So it can be very difficult to dispatch accurately.
Yeah, if you folks in the audience here, go back and look at the original video. I think John's going to try to link that down in the area below. The dispatcher really failed at her job, and that's all I'm going to say about that. If you listen to it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Let me talk about this approach, John. These deputies are having to go up to almost completely unknown situation, and so just know, dear listener, dear viewer, that everything we say after this is the picking of nits. These guys were incredibly brave and got in there and did the very best they could under the circumstances.
I also think here that our officers are doing a pretty good job trying to de-escalate a guy. Now, we know here he's having a psychotic break, and so he is contaminated thinking, high emotion, non-compliant person, right? So when you're kind of looking at your de-escalation matrix, this is emergency communication. You're not going to de-escalate this guy, okay? So you're just not going to. But they don't necessarily know that. And so I commend them for trying. Hey, man, we don't want to shoot you. We want to talk. Come on out here and let's talk, whatever. And I think that by and large, officers do this and do a very good job of it every day, and it gets lost in those incidents where it doesn't happen. So I do commend them here. You know, I think because we know what's going on inside, we're kind of like, go, man, you got to get inside, you got to go, but they got to act on the information they have.
Yeah, I think this, what Stephanie Widener, our CEO, likes to say applies here to law enforcement. She's usually talking about it in a self-defense, non-LE context, but if you're in a situation and something bad is happening, it's important that you radically and rapidly accept reality, understand what's happening. The sooner these cops realize, okay, this guy's not going to be de-escalated, he's not going to be communicated with effectively, it's probably go time at that point. I mean, they made the decision. I'm not going to fault them for it, for trying to extricate this guy through a window. I think probably getting in there and getting this threat stopped and getting him out through the door would have been a better call. But at the time, this is kind of what they had, and they're obviously concerned this guy's going to bleed out, so they did what they did.
And I mean, obviously, you know, you're like, wait a minute, we pulled this guy out over broken glass. Well, at least they threw a blanket down over it, so hopefully, you know, he's not going to get cut a whole lot worse on the broken glass and those things. And it's an odd situation to be in. And I do agree with you, Mike. I think, man, we got to get in there first and go. Now, they decided instead to kind of stack up on the door. Okay, fine. I think that's a decision. We're going to, you know, see if we can get this door open, see what's going on. I will say the officer whose badge cam that we're looking at here, man, you got to take either a step forward to be online with the officer that's just to your right and in the front, or you got to pull him back to be online with you, because I am so, my butthole is puckered here thinking that as soon as that door opens, he's going to take a step left and be right in my line of fire.
This is, again, John, one of those things you have to practice till you can't get it wrong. And, you know, again, I won't fault these guys too much. They're under a tremendous amount of stress. They probably figure, okay, there's a murdered or dying person inside, so they got a lot on their mind right now. But with that said, you just can't. You've got to have priority of fire. That needs to be something that you just drill into yourself when you're training small unit tactics, so this doesn't happen. Because as you said, if this guy takes a step to the left, or God knows, it's a very dynamic situation. Anything else could happen to cause this officer to even have a negligent discharge or whatever. So just try to stay online in these situations, boys and girls.
And it's something to just kind of think through as it comes your way. Now, again, officer kicks that door in, and now I've got 3 guys coming in, and let's see what threat they faced. Clearly here what we have is a justified use of deadly force. I mean, you can see the big old hunting knife. You know, he's got a big Rambo knife in his hand. He's coming at the officers. We have somebody that he's stabbed to death, you know, darn near to death already. He's already inflicted great bodily harm on someone. He's in danger of inflicting great bodily harm on the deputies, you know. And so this is one of those things where it's not just, can I shoot this guy? Not even should I shoot this guy because there's somebody else in the house that's at risk. But I have to shoot this guy right now, or he's going to start plunging that big old knife in me. And you know, this is the way the vast majority of law enforcement shootings go in the United States. It's literally a no-brainer that it's justified conduct. And so I think these officers, again, did a really phenomenal job of trying not to shoot this guy, but when they had to, they did their business.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, John. These guys obviously have trained plenty, and they've had that conversation, like to talk about with themselves in their head, that they could do what they had to do, and they did just that. It's no small thing. I've never had to do it, thank God, but it's no small thing to have to pull a trigger on a human being, no matter what the circumstances are. People like to talk about, what we talk about here is good and bad outcomes. And we will say to our dying breath, it's always a bad outcome overall when someone loses their life, but the fact is this guy gave them no choice. You know, we always say the perp gets a vote, and the perp, probably through, you know, a psychiatric issue he was having, emotional distress he was under, made a decision, and his vote was to charge at them with a giant knife. So they acted quickly and did what they had to do. And I also want to say they stopped shooting as soon as the threat appeared to be gone.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely commendable. You know, they shot when they needed to. They stopped when they didn't need to. Now we shift over to the other officer, who ends up kicking in the door. Couple of things here, and once again, I mean, I think these officers are absolutely saved 2 lives that night, absolute heroes. Unfortunately had to shoot this guy, and wish that he hadn't had to have been shot. But again, he gets a definitive vote in what's going on. Couple of things here that are kind of little. Number one, the officer who is stacked up on the right of the door, I think this is great and fine. I like that they're not right up against the side of the house. And I love that he's got a very bright light on his pistol. All police officers, in my opinion, should have a pistol-mounted light on their pistol, and it should throw all the candela to be able to get through this kind of pane of glass, get enough light on the other side to see what's going on there, and bounce it back to the eyes. And that takes a light that's not El Cheapo Guapo.
Yeah, agreed. You know, just as an aside, John, I guarantee you these officers at some point, probably not that night, because there was a shooting, so they were probably separated and weren't allowed to talk to each other for a matter of days. But at some point, these officers, these deputies sat down and had an after action, did a debrief, and they picked apart their own actions to get better. That's what law enforcement should do after any enforcement action is sit down and go, okay, what happened? What did you see? What did you see? What did we get right? What did we get wrong? So I'm sure they probably looked over this video and saw, you know, the priority of fire issue. Another thing I want to talk about is the kicking of the door. If you're a door kicker, like with your foot, not with a battering ram, even with a battering ram actually, if you're the door kicker, I'm a big proponent of your gun is away and in your holster, and you've got plenty of other firepower there to cover you, because having a gun in your hand and kicking a door at the same time is a recipe for disaster. Ask me if I've done it. Unfortunately, I can't lie, I've done it a bunch of times. Years ago, mostly interior doors that are a lot easier to kick. But the danger there, obviously, is you have a negligent discharge as you're doing the kicking and the holding of the gun at the same time. So try to avoid that. But all's well that ends well. It did end up with him having a bit of a janky grip, as we saw in one of these freeze frames.
Yeah, and you know, success is a heck of a deodorant, right? And so he kicks the door here, and he actually gets the first shot off on the guy. So you can see a couple of things. You know, we could certainly argue and say, well, gosh, you know, he was first into the fight on this guy, and so it's a good thing he had his firearm out. Yes, but also, again, a high risk of a negligent discharge, a high risk of the gun pointing somewhere where you don't want. Again, if you put that gun in the holster and yet you have the retention defeated and your hand on the gun, well, then you can kick without the risk there and then still get that gun back into the fight very quickly, you know, in somewhere around a half second if you need to. And so that's what we recommend from a technique perspective. And again, worked out fine here. Success is a heck of a deodorant. I'm totally okay with this officer shooting. It is a bit of a janky grip here and not exactly what we'd want. But that said, at this kind of distance, he's probably going to be able to get adequate hits by simply using a very rough aiming mechanism, you know, and just kind of aligning the slide of the gun that's under his eyes on the guy, and okay, fine, and it worked all right. I also agree with you, Mike. One of the things that I definitely see here is they shot when they had to shoot, and then the second they didn't have to shoot, they stopped shooting. And thank God for it, because kind of the last thing that I see here is how fast your backstop changes in a real deadly force encounter. So one of those things that you have to really think about in advance is, okay, we're about to go into the danger spot. What is my zone of fire that I actually can shoot in? And where do I have to stop? And again, this officer, his final shot's going off here, totally in a safe direction here, totally didn't endanger any of his fellow officers. Kudos to him for that, but could have changed in a heartbeat if anybody had taken a step. So it's certainly something to be aware of.
Yeah, and again, folks, we're picking nits here. These are things these deputies almost certainly are going to cover in an after action and be harder on themselves than we could ever be. That's how you should be as a law enforcement officer, always striving to get better. This is a dynamic situation, John. At any moment, this guy could have run out and broke right and run towards that lattice work or something, and then these officers, it would be a mess. They'd probably be, whether they like it or not, pointing their guns at their partner. So there's never going to be a perfect response to a situation like this. At the end of the day, these deputies came into a very dynamic, hectic situation. They worked through it and did their best to cover everyone's ass.